I'm a robot guy in a Barbie world, wrapped in metal, and it's dreadful. So when I heard about the Barbie movie, I thought to myself, well, at least as an IP that's made for girls this time, Hollywood can't do to it what they did to Star Wars, Marvel, He-Man, and so many other franchises that are male-dominated. But then I remembered High Guardian Spice! That was made for girls and it turned out to be just about the worst thing ever! Ben Shapiro made his tweet about it with a picture of him standing next to the poster, and it was just about the most memeable image I've seen in a long time. So at least one good thing came from the creation of this film. Now this movie has one of those plots that isn't done that often, but whenever I see it in any film, I always hate it. Barbie is from a magical world and she's coming to our world. I've never ever understood why this is done in movies. It was done in the He-Man movie, the Sonic movie, and even in the Fat Albert movie for some strange reason. It's kind of like a reverse isekai when you really get down to it. Instead of someone from our world traveling to a magical world, it's someone from a world that is 100 times more interesting than ours, and they're living in suburbia. Doing this to He-Man and Sonic is one thing, but Fat Albert and Barbie could 100% fit in our world. Now, as a grown man who's about to hit his 30s in a couple more years, I could confidently and safely say that I love Barbie Life in the Dream House. It was one of the funniest girl shows I've seen in a long time, so I'm living proof that Barbie can be also liked by grown men as well. But that was made before the woke wave hit Hollywood, so let's see how they made Barbie even more hated by men than boys. It starts off with a reference to 2001's A Space Odyssey. Well, I have to say I didn't see that coming. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't this movie made for little girls between the ages of 7 and 12? I don't think that many of them will get this reference. This is a problem I've had with a few movies growing up as a kid. Like, I'm 9 years old, I'm not gonna get a Scarface reference. Little girls are destroying their baby dolls because they found Barbie. Now, I want to make it clear, I'm not one of those conservative heads who thought this was subliminal messaging, telling people to kill babies, or for women to give up on motherhood and become a strong, independent woman. Hell, I actually thought this was kind of funny, and I got my hopes up for the rest of the film. But then the movie just had to continue. So we get a few Barbie jokes about how the shower and the faucet doesn't have any water, along with all the obvious jokes every single person in the world has thought of when they think about how a Barbie world would work. Barbie Life in the Dream House did all these jokes already, and they did it better. But it's also a feminist paradise, where all the jobs are run by women, and men just, I don't know, hang out, I guess. But then one day, our main character Barbie starts thinking about offing herself. Considering she's in this movie, I don't blame her.
For legal reasons, that's a joke. For legal reasons, that's a joke.
And she also gets flat feet, which is something I have, by the way. But why is this happening? Well, you see, because their world is connected to our world. Barbie's appearances change depending on how their owner plays with them. This movie should be called the Voodoo Doll Movie, and it should have been an R-rated horror film. Think about what you or someone you know has done to a Barbie. From ripping off limbs to burning them, crushing them, touching them inappropriately, along with a whole bunch of other things. The list just goes on, and that's not even going over the dogs chewing them up. Just imagine if in our world everyone lived an upper-class life, was super hot, and had eternal youth. But at any time someone could be ripped limb from limb, burst into flames, or just randomly go through a whole bunch of other gruesome deaths. I think I just got a good idea for a movie, along with anyone else who thought about this scene for more than 5 seconds. So Barbie and Ken go to the real world, and on day 1, Ken gets killed. Oh my god, they killed Kenny, those bastards! No, I'm only joking, that doesn't happen. But I wouldn't put it past the film writers to make a South Park reference, considering they made a reference to 2001's A Space Odyssey. Instead, some guy just slaps Barbie on the ass in a public place in broad daylight in Lefty, California. No, that wouldn't happen. That guy would get shit for doing something like that by tons of people right then and there. Believe me, I know. Also, let's not forget this sexual assault also happens right in front of her boyfriend. Oh yeah, Barbie also has to deal with catcalling as well. Now, maybe as a man, it's not my place to say this, but I think getting sexually assaulted is about 100 times worse than being catcalled. But the writers don't seem to think so. She's arrested for punching the guy who sexually assaulted her in the face. Now, if you think it's strange that she's getting arrested for defending herself, and you're a little confused by this scene, well, that's because you should be. You see, something that affects men much more than women is the prison system. Men spend more jail time than women, and they're more likely to get arrested. And before you bring up race, guess what? The gender difference between men and women is 6 times greater than the race difference between white and black people. I'm sorry, but you can't take something that affects men much more than women and say it's a problem for women. I hate to break it to you, but women do get the longer end of the stick on a few things. Hashtag world ends, women most affected. What this movie could have done is shown that the human world is better in some ways, but also worse in other ways. Now, one of the worst things about this narrative about how women get treated worse in society than men in every conceivable way is that it's already been disproven. Have any of you ever ever heard of a book called Self-Made Man. It's written by a lesbian woman who disguised herself as a super convincing man, and the story is all about the experiences she had to go through. Long story short, as a man, in some ways her life was better, but in many other ways it was so much more worse. I love the rant she has about straight women in it. Feminists hate this book because it flies in the face of everything they believe, but it does that because it's based on reality and not feelings. Anyways, Barbie discovers her owner, who of course talks about how Barbie is ruining the world with the unobtainable beauty standards it's made for young girls and how it's a capitalist tool. What? Didn't Hasbro look over this film? Why would they want people to think that their most popular product is a bad thing? Or for people to think that capitalism is a bad thing for that matter? They do understand they benefit from it a lot, right? Also, Ken finds out about the patriarchy. He really likes it because he's respected for once in his life. He takes it back with him to Barbie World and uses it to take over the place. Yep, it only took one man to take down a feminist utopia. It's strange to see a group of powerful women being defeated by one man in a modern movie. I think Barbie's owner compares the Barbies not handling patriarchy to the natives not being able to deal with smallpox because they haven't been exposed to it and therefore have no resistance to it. What? This film is really comparing the genocide of the Native American people to the goddamn patriarchy. Anyways, Ken, even though he took over, wants to have a democratically elected system. Bro, you already took over and most people in this world are women. This is one of the worst systems you could have implemented. He also makes a Trump talking point about building a wall so no one can come in or leave. Bro, you and your girlfriend were the first people to ever leave. You got those ideas in the first place because you left. This joke doesn't work on any level. So Barbie's plan is to have the Kens fight amongst themselves by having the Barbies hook up with other Kens. That just sounds like a Sneako's paradise to me. But it works and all the Kens end up fighting one another. Everything goes back to how it used to be, with men not having any power and being treated as second-class citizens. Barbie leaves Ken to be a single man and returns to the real world so just like Pinocchio, she could become a real girl. It starts with her growing a vagina, which is transphobic, mind you. Are you saying you're only a real woman if you got one of those? Also, she lives with a woman who turns out was the one who designed Barbie? Wow! It wasn't designed by a man? It was made by a woman all along? Cool. I and everyone else in the world already knew that. She's been the head of Hasbro for over 30 years. No one ever thought a girl's toy was made by a man. Also, when you think about what that one girl said about Barbie being bad for girls, then this woman is to blame for all the damage it's done. The movie ends with her going to a gynecologist. A strange way to end off a kid's movie, but hey, it's 2013. By the way, just like with the Netflix show Masters of the Universe Revelations, the trailers lied to us and hid most of this woke stuff from us. Other than the guy slapping Barbie's ass, everything to do with this feminist propaganda came as a shock to me. This is why the movie had such a good opening weekend, but only time will tell if it bombs or not. It has a budget of over 145 million, which does not include marketing, and the theaters take roughly half of that. Just about every movie coming out nowadays has bombed, so we'll just have to wait and see. Making over 70 million day one isn't bad at all, but it will need roughly 300 million to break even. Hey everybody, Editing Jar here. I'm recording this part one day before this video goes up, and apparently the movie has made over $337 million worldwide. And it's still gonna be in theaters for a few more weeks. Sorry guys, but we just can't win them all. Even if we include the advertising budget into this, it's just not gonna change the fact that this movie was a success. Now granted, just because a movie is successful doesn't mean it's good. Just look at Transformers 2. Anyways, let's get back to the review. But more importantly, the advertising this movie is making for the Barbie brand will more than likely make up for whatever money this movie loses. Unless, of course, it damages the brand. At the time of me recording this, Rotten Tomato has given it a 90% for both critics and audience scores. Wowee! Those numbers being so perfectly aligned must mean that they haven't been manipulated with at all. The film also had its release delayed in some places in the world to make sure it's not violating, mostly Muslim, social, cultural, or religious values. With all of these factors, I think it's gonna be a hit. Sorry, but this isn't an example of Get Woke, Go Broke. What's funny is that Amy Schumer dropped out of being in the Barbie movie because it wasn't feminist enough for her. I hope the earlier script was different, because if this movie wasn't feminist enough for her, then you have to ask yourself what is. There's a few other cringy scenes, like Barbie telling an old woman that she's beautiful, and the old woman replying, I know. Apparently, the actress for Barbie said this scene was too powerful and important to be cut out of the movie. I didn't know old women thought they were beautiful or even cared, but whatever. Also, in this movie, Hasbro is run by a group of men, even though in real life that isn't true. They literally had to ignore reality just to make a point about the glass ceiling. Also, apparently they need to get Barbie to return to her world, but they are also upset when she does? They keep talking about catastrophic things happening, but they don't make it clear what those things are. Every time I see another woke movie that broke the record of the last last one I saw. I think the next one can't possibly lower the bar even further. I don't think it's as bad as the Witcher Blood Origin show, which by the way, you guys should see my review of it after you finish this video. Please, I need to break even on it. But this is the biggest piece of feminist propaganda I have ever seen out of everything else combined. There's a utopia where men are treated as second-class citizens. After Ken found joy from a woman respecting him for once in his life, the Barbie world doesn't even try to meet him halfway. This movie pushes the idea that men can just sexually assault women in public, and if a woman fights back, she'll get arrested for it. If this movie was done more as a comedy and not as a commentary, it would have been so much better. I just can't wait to see the next woke movie or show that will somehow be even less subtle than this. I can tell that this movie's success will make others follow in its footsteps. To end this video off, I just want to say, imagine the outrage if the genders were reversed. If you guys like what I do, consider supporting me on Patreon. For $5 a month, you can have me say a silly line at the end of a video, which my $5 patrons haven't been doing as of late. Come on now, guys, you paid for this, give me a request. Now, I know a lot of you guys have voiced your displeasure with me talking really fast in videos as of late, but at the same time, a lot of you guys liked it. So in the next video, I'm going to be talking slower than this one and the last one, but still quicker than how I used to do.
You make